B'Shem Hashem, B'Shevach v'Hodaya L'Shmo Yitbarach, giving praise and thanks to His name. It's really kind of appropriate, not just for a learning session, but lahodos ulahalo, that we were zoche to keep the mitzvah of Shmita. As you pointed out, we started this. We had classes last summer, and it was novel. It was exotic. It was perhaps somewhat unknown. And here, besides for the fact that we were zoche to keep Shmita, if I'm teaching you in English, it means that you didn't grow up with Shmita. It means we all came from foreign soil, literally, and we were zoche to make it to Eretz Yisrael and keep mitzvahs Eretz Yisrael. That in itself is reason to keep Shevach Vodai and to come together. But Makedos Baruch Hu es Hashem to Lahodos Ulahalo Shechianu V'Kimanu V'Gyanu Zman Hazeh. In addition, we can't ignore the fact that we're right before Rosh Hashanah, and the truth is, with Shmita, without Shmita, as the Gemara in Yerushalmi, Talmud Yerushalmi says, the original version of Modeh Ani that we say in the morning went something like this. It was a 3-part prayer said every day. Modeh Ani, that I opened my eyes. Modeh Ani in the afternoon, that just as I saw, Modeh Ani in the morning, that I opened my eyes and saw the sun in the east. Modeh Ani again in the afternoon, that just as you gave me the sun in the east to see, you made it through the day. I can now see the sun in the west. Don't take that for granted. And at night, before retiring, please God, let me see tomorrow again the sun in the morning in the east. So what's true in the daily cycle is certainly true in the yearly cycle. And we have to give hodaya that those of us who were here last summer and when we learned about Shmita going into it, that we're still here. No, shum davar lo muvan me'elav. Nothing is ever taken for granted. B'yodcha kol chai v'ruach kol b'sari shanashama lach v'aguf shalach, as we said this morning in Slichos. We can only then we'll start with the bracha. I'll try to end with the bracha, but in case I forget because of time constraints, and we should have the bracha that they say kishem shenichnas lebris. That's the bracha we give it at bris milah. So one interpretation of that is that just as this baby 8 days old has here assembled his father, his mother, the loved ones, the family, the friends, the Torah, bar mitzvah, and chuppah, with the assembled people, they should make it through the life cycle and enjoy the different milestones and nachas of the child as he goes into adulthood. So too, we should be zoche. You pardon me, lahavdil. I was probably 15 years old in 1986. That was the year that Halley's Comet returned. And, that comes, unless we're going to be traveling in spaceships, that comes back here once every 76 years. So, once you see it, you can hope and you can pray. But Kashem Shezachinu L'Kayim Shmita, we should be zoche to be together, happy and healthy again in 7 years' time or 6 years' time to begin the Shemitah again. So that's bracha number 1. Bracha number 2 already brings us into our subject. One major difference between me then and now was not just more gray hairs, but it's also, actually it could be connected because when I came here last time to learn together with you, I was here as a guy from Tzfat. And now after 1 year, I have been a Rav of an agricultural moshav in the Lower Galilee, where Shmita is chai v'kayam. And so I come to you with perhaps some gray hairs from that, but also with the experience from the field. So, I wish, halachically, but certainly in terms of the hands-on metzius, the day-to-day reality of agriculture, at least on a farm, not necessarily. Also in the garden here in the old city, my garden was not much to talk about. If you come see where we live now, you shouldn't come see where we live now. Let's just say, if you want to stay in Tzfat, but we miss Tzfat very, very much. I can tell you that. Right after the moving truck left, I was like, what was I thinking? That's how it always is, right? So don't think so much about it.
The rumor started.
No. So I will tell you this, and I think this is very appropriate at the end of Shemitah, because beginning of Shemitah we talk theory. We talked here, I believe, about what the Torah promises. You ask, wait a second, if you can't farm and cultivate the land, then Rebbeinu Shalom, what are we going to eat in an agrarian society? That's the Torah records the question, and the answer, of course, is b'tzivisi as birkasi. Hashem will send His bracha that there will be bounty not just for Shemitah, but for Shemitah and beyond until the next cycle of crops comes in. So please allow me to share with you from the Shetach live. You may a lot of things you see. There's a lot of like fundraising going on for Shemitah, and you see these video clips and things. It's all good and true, but I can tell you, I'm not trying to fundraise. I can tell you, like, as we say in Hebrew, dvarim kavayosam, straight, from the cow's mouth. And Dafka use cow because a lot of the agriculture in my moshav centers around dairy farming. And the way it works is this. Exactly a year ago, Steilan had a problem. Shemitah, as you recall, Rosh Hashanah was very early. It was like right at the beginning of September. And just, bichlal, this is going to be connected to the rest of the presentation, just to remind ourselves the way our calendar works. We really have a double calendar. We have a solar and a lunar calendar. The solar calendar is what's responsible for the agricultural seasons, and it's in the mitzvos that are connected to it. That's why Pesach is the Chag HaAviv, and so forth, the spring holiday. And there is the lunar calendar, which of course has an 11-day proximate difference every year. And that's why we have the leap year system. So last year, Rosh Hashanah was early. Obviously, it wasn't really early because it was on Aleph Tishrei, but vis-a-vis where it usually falls out in the solar calendar, somewhere deeper into September, it was right there at the beginning of September, which means Shemitah started relatively early. Now, that poses a significant problem even for farmers who are used to every 7 years keeping Shemitah. In my moshav, I was merited to maybe in 7 years, Bas Medrash will come visit us. We'll do a field trip. But we had many groups come to learn about Shemitah in the field and see the bracha hands-on and hear the stories straight from the farmer's mouth, not from the horse or from the cow's mouth. And we learned a fascinating story of a moshav found 70 years ago, which is the beginning, utilized the heter mechira, selling of the land to a non-Jew in order to continue cultivating the fields. And by doing so, essentially, I'm not saying they violated Shemitah, but for sure they bypassed Shemitah. In other words, they turned it into a neutral zone where there was no Shemitah. And that was pretty much the first 7 years, second 7 years, until, as one farmer says over, my neighbor, who was a Haredi, I don't know what he was doing in my moshav, but he was there, and he decided he is going to leave his crops. It's not. This is another also a misconception, I think. We imagine that you come to my moshav and I'm going to show you Shemitah. You imagine I'm going to show you like desolation, weeds, thorns. That is not always the case, and maybe not even usually the case, because in Steilan, the main crop that's grown in the thousands of acres surrounding the moshav is wheat. And wheat is grown for animals, for the dairy cows who eat the wheat and which is just another story in itself, they produce milk and dung. Milk goes to our kitchen, and dung goes back to the fields to make more wheat. It's an unbelievable niflos haborei, the wondrous works, the way Hashem makes this cycle work. However, the issue is that if you plant the wheat before tending it, it's immense tracts of land. So you're actually totally dependent, even in a regular year, on the heaven blessing of rain and other winds and insects and moles and mice and things like that. What's going to be, what's not going to be. So what the solution was to keep Shemitah kehilchasa, according to the halachot, was to plant the wheat before Rosh Hashanah and let it grow. I didn't do any labor, any prohibited malacha during Shemitah. Okay, the wheat grows, anyway, it's always cut early. You don't wait for it to get golden sheaves because you don't want the kernels. You want the green, moist wheat, which goes to become the cow fodder. And without getting into the details, it's okay through Otsar Beis Din to utilize that. There's no problem there. But there is a problem this past year. So sorry, I'm taking a step back. I'm going to do this quick. This fellow, this neighbor, I'm going to plant early. Now, usually you plant right after the first rain. When I don't mean a little rain, I mean the first, like when it really becomes the rainy season, mid-November in the solar calendar. Why? Because a kernel, a seed can stay in the ground for a long time. It's dry, no problem. But if there's a little bit of rain and that rain penetrates those centimeters down to where that kernel is nested, then it can actually rot. It can germinate. If it doesn't get the next makah, the next amount of ration of rain, then it will have kind of had a false start and sprout and rot. So that's why common agriculture sense said, that's why you have your farmer's almanac. You want to know when the rain begins, till you wait till the rainy season. Statistically, that's when it's going to be okay. So that's what this guy did. And they saw he came out with better crops than they did. So they're like, well, this bracha, we heard about it. This is in the 50s. So little by little, this moshav, where other aspects of its halachic life have not been necessarily what we would call mahadrin, like trying to be extra credit. They just, usually perhaps, just to get by. My moshav, for the most part, took on this practice of planting early. And this farmer always documented with computer printouts. There were those who didn't. There were those who used the heter mechira every year, how it always worked out ahead. There was one year he said when it looked like the other guys were coming out ahead, like they're making fun of me. It's a friendly competition. What's going to be? And it's like, okay, I don't know. Until because of they planted early, they harvest early. Other people harvested late. They had the bales, and there was a very unfortunate rain in late April, which basically, if it rains on the bales of hay, that's no good, right? That ruins the hay. So, I don't want to be happy about someone else's downfall, but they again came out ahead until this past year, many of the farmers who traditionally their families had always planted before Shemitah said, whoa, that is absolutely insane. Why? Because you want me to plant in August? That's like, I don't know to laugh at that, but I learned that you're supposed to laugh. Plant in August? That's crazy. Plant in August. Why? Because you're saying that the seed has to remain there such a long time, perhaps on average double as it usually would, being exposed to any fluke early rain, which would again make it rot, to mice, to birds, to whatever. It was considered really, not just against it was really considered crazy. That was the language used, mishuga. And so we did see a drop in the amount of people who wanted to keep Shemitah in that way. And they went over to the heter mechira, but there were those who did it. And now here I want you to understand something. I know we have to get more tachlis on the topic, but the Sapir B'Brichos Hashem, this is the facts on the ground. The way it works is you could say, oh, I want to be like those farmers I saw in those little video clips, so I won't do anything, right? So you have some farmers who say, I'm not going to plant after Rosh Hashanah and Shmita. I'm not going to plant before Shmita. I don't want to take the risk. Because if you're planting, it means you're investing. You have an expense. You have an outlay. Better to call it even, right, in advance. So it turns out that the farmers who planted in advance showed tremendous emunah. They're laying out about 200 shekels per acre to till and plant the seeds. And it seemed like it was like just throwing it away. And Bli Ayin Hara, Baruch Hashem, it's like black and white or green on brown. The way the rains, the timing of the rains, everything sent tremendous. Well, I certainly the best crop in years, maybe the best crop in the last 7 years, to the very point where whatever subsidies they were promised by the various Karen Shvius, it was like You guys don't need subsidies. We're not giving you subsidies. God gave you the substance. That's Maisa Shahaya. So we're really sitting at the end of a year, at least in our fields, of divine bracha. So that was probably by the way of introduction. Now, so technically speaking, when Rosh Hashanah begins, Shmita, that's what the Mishnah in the first parak of Rosh Hashanah says, that Aleph Tishrei is Rosh Hashanah, the Shmitin of Yavlos. It's the new year, it's the cutoff, it's the deadline, demarcation for Shmita, meaning Shmita starts on Rosh Hashanah and Shmita ends on Rosh Hashanah. So technically speaking, 1 week from this evening, Shmita is over and we'll see you in 6 years. However, because we're talking about nature, and again, I forgot to apologize for my voice. There was supposed to be a microphone. I went zero voice as of yesterday. Thanks to the prayers of the holy women, apparently it works. So nature does not cooperate so neat with calendar and dates. And because we're dealing here with nature and the agricultural cycle, so it's not going to be at everything after Rosh Hashanah is over and done with, because there's a lot of overlapping elements. And to understand this, today there's many halachos, many cases, many questions, as we always do. What I would like to do is present to you kind of the underlying principle, the logic, so that you'll have at least the basic information and sensitivities and sensibilities to realize, hey, this may be an issue. Whatever comes up, be able to ask the right questions as they come up. Yes, of course, I will try to give practical examples, at least in my world, that I've seen and answered and tried to find out for people. But we need to remind ourselves, what is Shemitah made up of? I think this is where the main confusion is. Shemitah is not just one mitzvah. There's a number of the Taryag 613 that are kind of connected to Shemitah or fall under Shemitah. I would break it down to 3 components. The most famous of them is thou shalt not work. Don't do malacha, prohibited labor in Shemitah, primarily planting and pruning, harvesting, and plowing. Those are mentioned in the Torah. The idea of a farmer doing labor, right? That's the classic parallel to Shabbos. We all know on Shabbos, 39 big ones, don't do it. It's Havdalah time, do whatever you want, right? We don't have an issue after Shabbos usually, right? We in Shemitah, it's not as simple, because there's another 2 elements, or at least 1.5, we'll call it. There's another element which is regarding what we'll call the gavra, the person, what you should or shouldn't do, your labor. There's something in halachic terminology what we call the cheftza, the object. It's called something about the subject, me, what I do, what I don't do. There's another entire body of halachas concerning the fruits that are begot during Shemitah, the fruits and vegetable grown, however they were grown, with cultivation, without cultivation, they popped up by themselves, you planted them early, whatever it was. I'm not interested right now in how they got here. But if they were defined as being blossom sprouted or reaped during Shemitah, I'll get into the details in continuation, then these are Shemitah fruits, and they have inherent holiness and rules that govern how they may or may not be treated. And that's about the fruit. It's not about you. So I can even make it very simple right now. Come Rosh Hashanah, so you make Havdalah. You and I are allowed to perform any agricultural, gardening, labor, procedure, cultivation of any type, as far as what I am allowed or not allowed to do. Like on Shabbos, we make Rosh Hashanah, we make Havdalah. It's Tavshin Pei Gimel. It's the first year of the new cycle. However, there is the issue of, wait a second, I don't start everything from scratch. We're in mid-process. I have olive trees and small olives. I have pomegranates that are big pomegranates. I have citrus fruits that who knows, I got 2 different years at the same time in my one tree, right? There's still things that are in process. And because I'm allowed to do the labor, but the fruit itself has inherent intrinsic holiness, so I need to know the halachas of those fruit. The fruit doesn't know about Rosh Hashanah. The fruit doesn't know when it was. The fruit, as long as it's around, has its own life cycle and its own set of halachas, and that's what we have to know when we're into the year 8. There's a third area of Shemitah, which actually in the Torah is presented in Sefer Dvarim. Shemitah in the Torah is mentioned 4 times, 2 little references in Sefer Shmos, major parsha in Bahar, in Sefer Vayikra, and in Dvarim, which we read just 2 or 3 weeks ago, there is a reference to Shemitah in a totally, it would seem, non-agricultural context, and that is, of course, Shmitat Kesofim. Help me with Shemitah, please. The release of debts, the prohibition to claim debts, money owed to you at the end of the Shemitah year. So that doesn't really go into the 8th year, but it is one of the reasons we're meeting today, because we have special halachas which we couldn't even talk about a year ago, because in this upcoming week is an opportunity to fulfill, to fulfill or to begin to fulfill the mitzvah of Shmitas Kesofim, which is kind of more in the financial and not in the agricultural gardening realm. So those are the 3 aspects. I'm going to go through each of those 3 aspects and how it's relevant, like now the last week into year 8. Again, the 3 aspects are performing labor, halachot. Number 2, the kiddushat of the peros, and number 3, Shmitas Kesofim. Okay, so let's talk about the working the land. So yes, it's like Motzei Shabbos, Havdalah, it's all over. There's 1 or 2 caveats that need to be mentioned. Meaning, after you make Havdalah on Rosh Hashanah, Motzei Rosh Hashanah, you can go down to your garden now. You can turn on that water as much as you want. You can prune that tree, even if it's to make it grow. You can plant. Right? You don't have to think about, wait, if I toss that apple out the window, is that planting? Is that not planting? Is the water from my air conditioning? Is that irrigating? Is it not? Is my plant on my porch? Is it, under a roof, not under a roof? Is it have holes in the bottom? We're finished. Okay? However, there are, I would say, 1 to 2 caveats here. Okay, so great, I can't wait. I want to plant. I've been planning for a year, and a whole year to dream about my Garden of Eden of year 8. So you want to go straight to the nursery and buy all those flowers, trees, vegetables, whatever they are. Oh, one second. They didn't just like Motzei Rosh Hashanah kind of beam in out of nowhere these saplings, these flower shtilim, how do you say? Saplings or bulbs and things that come in those little black things, Okay, where did that come from? Right? That didn't just, like I said, there's overlap. We don't just like divide the year. So probably the most important thing, and perhaps somewhat challenging, this may be the biggest deflator of any Shemitah balloons for next Wednesday, is that we still have to pay attention to where we are buying our seeds, saplings, flower bulbs, whatever they're called. Why? Because if you just go to a regular nursery, it very well could be, hopefully not, that these were cultivated, planted, created the Isser in a prohibited manner during Shemitah. Perhaps not unlike the halacha, if someone cooks food on Shabbos in a prohibited manner on purpose, then the status of eating that food, even on Motzei Shabbos, even on Tuesday, can be halachically questionable depending on the circumstances. So here also, there's an issue of not being machzik yidei over avera, of not basically retroactively supporting the illicit labor of violating the Shemitah. Okay, what's the good news? The good news is there are 2 good news here. Number 1 is there are many, I'm not in Tzfat, I can't tell you names, you probably know. There should be a number of nurseries that have a tu'udah, that have a certificate attesting that what they what they're selling is under some kind of competent rabbinic supervision. Now, point number one is, I always say this even about kashrus of food, is that it's, I'm a rabbi, I can tell you like it is, okay? It's not sufficient that, you go to a guy and say, oh, Shemitah, he goes, yeah, look here, I got these lemon trees, stapled onto the lemon trees. This comes from somewhere else. You need to have, or he shows you like a tudat mishloach, like what's it called, like an invoice of a delivery slip, right? Oh, see, I got here. It's got the stamp. It comes from over there by Ariel. They have a big chishtil, I think it's called, and that's the equivalent of going into a fruit and vegetable store all year round, any year, and saying, what would you have a tu'udah? And he's like, he shows you, yeah, well, I get it. He shows you the tu'udah of the warehouse Rishon LeZion. That's great. If I'd be in Rishon LeZion, I'm very happy to buy there. But I want to know about, who's telling me that what you're showing me here is what came from there? So any tu'udah, any certification is always local, right? How does the phrase go? Tzipora, think global, local. How does it go? Think local, think global, buy local. Buy local, meaning you want always local supervision, that this store, not this branch, not this chain, not this brand, this store, somebody is paying attention how the things that are being sold were dealt with. Again, I'm not going to go into right now the question, basically, I'll tell you like this. If you ate food that was under the supervision of heter mechira throughout this past year, then there would be the same. It would be a heter mechira on the tu'udah. Like that's one level of shmita kashrus. If you avoided heter mechira at all costs, then you would probably consider doing so when it comes to buying it. Even though there could be room to say that when it comes to eating, I don't do heter mechira, and when I come to buying, if it has heter mechira, good enough for me. There is room for that. It's a nuanced question. I can't paskin for you that question, but at least minimum there should have been some Shemitah certification. Otherwise, kind of you're planting after Shemitah, but essentially you're getting your running start. Based because someone gave you a head start in Shemitah retroactively. That he was your proxy. He was your shaliach. Okay. Generally, I checked this with a very well-known national agronomist. An agronomist. He said that by mid-December, Hanukkah time, you can assume as a chazaka that you can make a presumption that there's been a turnaround. In other words, whatever's being sold in these nurseries by Hanukkah, you don't need a tu'udah anymore. Okay, you can just make that. If you know about something specific, okay, that's good. But as a generality, it's okay to go shopping. That's when you can really let loose wherever you want. Buy. That doesn't make you happy? Okay, but I think you have places with a certification. I believe. I want to believe that.
Is there a difference between seeds and plants? Like are seeds the same? Like a package?
Look, I don't know where the seeds were made. I'm familiar with some things that have a lot of English on them, like these like colorful little packages. If they're coming from Chutz La'aretz, the question doesn't get off the ground. It's a no-brainer that you can buy those seeds. Again, assuming that they are imported from Chutz La'aretz. Yes, absolutely. Again, because I don't want to like cool down the thunder here. You understand. I hope that there's a big difference between you planting in Shemitah than you buying something and planting now something that was cultivated in Shemitah. It's not the same level of severity. So you can rely on what it says on the pack. You can read the ingredients, as they say, right? You can do that. You don't need that kind of thing. But things which were cultivated, obviously they were cultivated in Israel, and so until Hanukkah you would look for that kind of supervision. There's another aspect. I was looking at my garden. which I know absolutely nothing about, but I know there's an olive tree in my front yard, and I didn't really touch it. I didn't have a gardener touch it the whole time. And I'm looking at it, looking, as you may have, if you have olive trees, you see the olives are starting to grow, and it's kind of, the tree's getting a little heavy. It just seemed that it's kind of lopsided. And I'm like, during Shemitah, we avoided pruning that would cause, or was designed for growth. That's why when I cut down my schach from my palm tree, I did it because an amateur, I'm definitely harming the tree. I'm certainly not causing to go and get a professional gardener. He knows how to cut it exactly the right way. So, he's giving you schach is also helping the tree grow. That's very iffy if he can do that. But an amateur or less than amateur like me, a butcher like me, there was no problem just sawing off those palm branches. So now I'm thinking I'm going to have the gardener come. He's going to sculpt this, he's going to make it right. And then I realized, well, what do you mean, Rabbi? Didn't you just say you could do whatever labor you want to do? But don't forget, we have the gavra, the person, and the hefza, the object. What's growing on the branches of the olive tree? On that said olive tree are olives. Now, if I cut and prune it, I'll tell you even more. It could be now is even stricter than during Shemitah. Oh, that's what you want to hear? Why? There's a very, very limited case. Because usually, you probably know this, if you have a hedge, a bush, a tree that is somehow obstructing, causing inconvenience, certainly any kind of danger to passerbys, you come with the machete, the chainsaw, cut that, you don't care, you're not trying to fix the tree, that's okay. And last year, either there was no fruit on the tree, if it was a fruit tree, or there was fruit. But what fruit was it? It was fruit that began to blossom in the 6th year. So now here I am, Motzei Rosh Hashanah, with my new gardening gloves, the whole, I bought all, I don't know if you can buy tools, say, I have tools, I'm ready to go. You want to cut that olive tree. But if I take down those branches, what am I doing? I am mashchit kedush perot kedushat shiviit. I'm destroying the potential for edible fruits. In other words, before it blossoms, there was nothing that I was destroying. I was it didn't even get off the ground. It didn't grow yet. So you could cut that olive tree to make it look nice, even if you want to design it like a duck or something, I don't know, whatever. They have those things here, like they look like a bicycle in Tzfat, right? You got all those, right? So just until next election, every election, they have to change all the key cars, I know. But now that there's fruit on it, so it'd be one thing if the fruit was ripe, go ahead, cut it and use it. But if you already started the fruit, but it hasn't yet reached edibility, by cutting it, you're basically destroying the potential to partake of and benefit from Shemitah fruit. And God wants us to eat and enjoy Shemitah fruit. Shemitah fruit is not a problem. It's a mitzvah. It has holiness to eat. And that's why there will be a limitation in that pruning. Not as in today, the problem of pruning is pruning that causes growth. The pruning we're concerned about is pruning where there's a fruit tree and the fruit is not yet ripe. Fruit is not yet ripe. Okay.
Question?
Yes, we have a question here on Zoom from Jody, is that?
Your co-host, yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to the question, I'll repeat it for the crowd here.
I have a pear tree, which it needs to be trimmed. So can I have someone come? I just need to be clear. Can someone come after Rosh Hashanah to trim it? There's no buds or anything. They won't happen until no.
No buds, no pears. Okay, so the question here, good case at hand. The pear tree has no pears. It has no buds, because as we all know, pears only blossom in the spring, summer, whatever, right? Whenever pears, I don't know. But there are no pears on a pear tree. So the answer is, so today, till Rosh Hashanah, you can only do the kind of cutting that will either allow access or somehow there's some kind of problem that the tree will topple over if you don't cut it, that the tree itself will be damaged. But to spruce it up, to enhance its growth potential, starting next Wednesday. And you can do it as you please. Clear? Okay. So,
Question.
yeah, please.
Okay, so in other words, so if we have, it's outside of our investment, we have 15. So we can just harvest it without cutting branches, we can just take it off, no problem.
I assume it'll take a couple months till the olives are ready, right? Okay, so that brings us to, I guess, beautiful tie into the next stage. Up to now, I talked about pruning or cultivating. What about just the harvesting, right? You may have a pomegranate tree. You may have you're gonna have olives, deeper into the season. I don't know what else is still on the tree. What else is still on the tree now? Lemons, avocado. Figs are still there. Yeah, figs are there. Grapes, maybe.
Passiflora.
What?
Passiflora.
The whole story. I'm not quite. It's beyond my pay grade of passiflora. I know it's a whole story. I can't. If you want to message me privately, you can. I will. But the passiflora, passion fruit is passiflora, right? It's a whole story. Passiflora, is a fruit. That's how it works.
Okay.
So all of these fruits. Now here we'll come to the next question, and this is going to be a major difference also in the supermarket. Okay, there's a difference between fruits and vegetables, right? This is already from the Mishnah, and there's many reasons for this, but everything defined as a vegetable, if you're saying borei pri adama on it, even if it's a pineapple, then its status, what year it's affiliated and connected to, meaning is it a Shmitat pineapple, is it a Shmitat pineapple or an 8th year pineapple, depends on when it was harvested, when it was reaped, right? So that means, let's go back a year. You had, I'll just give this as an example, it's a little more complicated, cucumbers from last Tzom Gedalia, day after Rosh Hashanah, let's say they get to the market fresh right away. If they were cut after Rosh Hashanah, they were already kiddushat shiviit. They already had the inherent holiness in all the laws of buying, selling, not throwing away, not destroying, not making facial masks from them is in effect. And even though, what do you mean, Rabbi? The thing was fully ripe, Erev Rosh Hashanah, all I did was just snip it. It goes by the snip. That's what counts for vegetables. Conversely, that means that vegetables that will be, even if right now, I don't know exactly how this could be, but let's say you had vegetables that somehow existed halachically before Rosh Hashanah. Let's just say you could think of a case like that, because my problem is, how did the vegetables get there, right? You know what I'm saying? How was there that cucumber in Erev Rosh Hashanah? That's an issue. But let's just say you can come up with some case. I could give you a case. This may be somewhat of a professional level case of, let's say somebody, I'm thinking, yes, it's complicated. Forget.
I can give you one.
Go good.
Potatoes grow.
You have potatoes growing.
Maybe got 10 potatoes last year and some came up now.
Right.
This year.
So you're going to have an issue there, though.
I can't have them.
You can't have them, even if you cut them after, but the rabbi just said, you cut them after Rosh Hashanah, it's already 8th year potatoes. There's an issue here. I'm not going to get into it right now. It's called sfichin. There's a rabbinic ordinance against any vegetables, because oh yeah, really, it came up by itself, right? We saw you, the cameras caught you last night, at 3 a.m. Shmita was such a hard mitzvah. People looked for, it was like income tax, every possible loophole and every possible under the table ability to get around it. So the Chachamim simply said, forget a tree. And obviously you didn't plant the tree now, right? Because it would be orla, first of all, and we see it's been there for a long time, so it doesn't apply to fruits. But technically, theoretically, once, let's say, I don't know what the cycle of a cucumber, someone help me? Cucumber? I know lettuce is 28 days. Let's say you start planting lettuce, okay? Next Wednesday. So that for sure is going to be 8th year lettuce, no problem whatsoever, okay? Fruits, however, do not go by when they were harvested. Fruits are determined by when they were blossomed, when they blossomed. And that means that I can't think there's any exception. You may still have a lemon tree, like this really big kind of, like really overly ripe, yellow kind of hollow lemon that may be left over from the 6-year blossom. There could be such a thing, I think. So that lemon is not holy. However, all the regular lemons that you're gonna have, pomegranates, olives, they're all blossomed in the Shemitah year. And that means that even if it's not Rosh Hashanah anymore, they still have the holiness. They're still, first of all, you're not allowed to sell them. You're not allowed to destroy them. You can only use them for their original purpose. They're hefker. I'm allowed to come and say, nice lemons you got there. And take it, not just compliment it. The caveat here is that, what do I want to say here? What you need to know is that means that you could, for those of you who are familiar with this idea of like the Shemitah garbage can, but I taught you last year, you don't even need leftovers. You have 2 bags, one on top of the other, double wrapped, can be placed and disposed of. That is going to continue technically even probably more. Probably we're going to have more exposure to fruits and wine and olive oil that is holy with Shemitah in the 8th year than in the 7th year. So now really we're kicking in those halachas of paying attention where it came from. If it came from your friend, has her olive tree, I made my homemade olive oil. That's great. That's great. So I'm going back to your question now about, so how do you pick it? So we know that whatever is a Shemitah fruit tree is, the fruit is hefker. It is ownerless, it's relinquished. So a person is allowed to make for their own produce. You can only you're equal with everyone else. You can harvest those olives just like anyone else would. And that means like enough for a family for a week at a time. You can harvest. If you want to make, but that's kind of hard when it comes to making olive oil. You're not going to take it, to the press a little bit. Maybe it's good for pickling them. That's what's called to pickle. When you make olives. But when it comes to oil, so this is a question. If they were, I'm saying something which I'm 99% sure if this is relevant to you. Double check either with me or someone else. If you have olives for oil, then the whole point of them is for the oil. So then you can go for it, take it to the oil, and the oil actually becomes hefker, and you can give it out. Yes, Rabbi.
I take every year from olives, for the whole year, like 10 kilos.
So you take out all the olives all at once.
I take only once, and then because it's a whole process, it's like laying in jars for 2 months before eating.
Right, so you're not going to do little by little. You're not going to do it little by little.
I always do it in once. But can I do it this year? Because this is definitely achilles. You can eat the olive.
Right.
You see, Rabbi, the other fruits, I'm making my own liquors for fruits.
Right.
Cherries, escobar. I'm not doing it actually because that means lowering the kiddushat in the bracha. I take something that is bracha is better pH, and I make a liquor that the next chapter is not allowed. So
right.
Liquor I don't do. I make chocolate liquor, other things. But the olives, it's so much work in the green olives, the whole process of working on it in order to be ready. The laying like outside, I need the yard for 2 months before I eat them, before they get up.
Right. So this is a question. It's a great question. I'm not saying I don't know the leniency.
No, not only me, the companies.
Oh, so what happens? Yeah, so we have literally tons, tens, probably hundreds of tons of olives that we produce in our moshav. But here we don't have that problem because we have what's called otzar beit din. Otzar beit din means that in order to enhance the distribution of the Shemitah fruit.
Yeah, but I don't take olives for my I have a tree in my yard. I take from Hefker.
Oh, so
No problem.
no problem. I think you come from your own trees. Oh, okay.
It's fast and so blessed that you walk in the sidewalk.
Right.
And you see fruits. The
Yeah.
people stand
Right, yeah,
out
okay.
and they bottom street.
Great, great,
Yeah.
great.
So I use olives and I use palm trees, everything that grows in fast.
That's perfect. That's totally fine. That's totally fine. That's totally fine. Good. Okay, I want to quickly shift.
So, and then when they change back, like, are you allowed?
Right, so you're going to continue in the stores to see the kashrut certifications that will demarcate what Shemitah kashrut is, even after Shemitah, because of this reason, because of the fruit and because of the vegetables, at least in the beginning. There will be a time, let's say, okay, again, everyone to each their own, it's legitimate, but let's say you, for this past year, avoided kashrut that was what's called heter mechira, let's just say. And so, that probably put you in a bind several times during this past year. Oh, you want it, but you can't, and you can't get no access, eating by this person and this wedding and this, that, it's an issue. So what's going to happen is as follows. Right after Rosh Hashanah, so there's still going to be an issue of your potatoes, meaning that even if they were cut after Rosh, first of all, potatoes are b'chlal a problem, meaning potatoes were fine to buy deep into the winter because the potatoes that are marketed, distributed, really are potatoes that were stored in cold storage from before. But just even about fresher vegetables, let's say, there's still going to be an issue with them as we go past Rosh Hashanah, because they were planted during the Shemitah year. They were grown during the Shemitah year. And if you're not holding from Heter Mechira, you're still going to look for that different certification. But there's going to become a point where already that the market will, like I said about Hanukkah time for the nurseries. So in the vegetable stores as well, where the fruit you're getting, the tomatoes, peppers, carrots, fresher vegetables will already have been planted post Rosh Hashanah, and therefore, if you want to keep your eye on the ball, you want to go to that store, you missed that store, you haven't gone there, and so what you can do is, Judy reminds me, I can send you a link. There are tables of based on market conditions, distribution channels, when the newly planted vegetables hit the market. In other words, if it's December and you see a tomato, I'm saying theoretically, I don't know, but there's tables that will tell you the date. Tomatoes now are in the clear. So even if you don't want to use heter mechira, but you're following these tables that will allow you kind of to walk between the raindrops and go back to that supermarket. If you just need the potatoes, and it's not, I'm not eating potatoes here, you get into that, yes, this and not that, but that's kind of the logic underneath it. Fruits, as I said, the fruits that blossomed, you will continue, if you don't use heter mechira, you will continue to look for that store that has non-heter mechira fruits, because the fruits are all Shemitah fruits coming in to this year. Another example, this will also be the wines and grape juice. In other words, if the wine harvest, by the way, it's very hard, one of the hardest branches of agriculture to keep Shemitah Keilchasa really is in the vineyard. You can get by with the fruit trees, a little less pruning, a little less this and that, but in the vineyard, really, without the professional pruning, the harvest really, they take a big hit. That's why you already see now Carmel Mizrahi grape juice is not coming from their usual vineyards. It'll be Yuvul Nachri and things like that. So you want to, you'll keep an eye out if you care about that kashrus of non-heter mechira. If that's your preference, then even wines, which during Shemitah, it still had your Mahadrin Hechsher on it. But this upcoming year, it could be the same bottle of wine in the same store. I'm not even sure, even if you go to it could even be in a store that, is considered like Yesh, or I don't know, neto chisachon, a store that perhaps has a mahadrin, there could still, you still should keep an eye out for as the wines, as the batzir, the harvest of 2022 hit the market in mid 2023. That's
2022 on the bottle. Is that what you
right. That's the harvest. Right. That's what you're going to see. You just look for the kashrus will always tell you what it is. That's what you should always look at. Yes. All right.
So two things. So in the future, like wines that are 2022, we should probably try to avoid.
Again, I'm making no judgments here about heter mechira or not heter mechira, but if you care, if you choose to not rely on that leniency, then right, then you haven't seen that yet because the wine on the shelf now is too early. We just had the wine harvest now.
But I remember also from previous years that with grape juice and wine, if some wine or grape juice spills on the table, it's just spills. Take it up with a napkin, or pick up, like you even have to take the napkin or pick the towel and wrap that up and treat that as kiddushat.
So I would be hard pressed to find that case. Meaning, I could tell you why. But I can only tell you about me. You could have all kind of humrot stringencies and say why someone would do that. But I would say mainstream halacha, as far as I understand, there'd be very rare. There'd be only one case where that would be, because usually it'd be one of two. It's one of three. Either it's a foreign wine, it's no question, right? So saying it doesn't start, right? If it's wine Eretz Yisrael, if it's heter mechira, so if it's heter mechira, then most people would probably not treat. If you don't want either or, if you don't drink heter mechira because you don't hold of it, then you're not going to have it on your table. It's not going to spill on your table, right? And if you do hold of heter mechira, then it's because you believe that there is no kedusha in that wine, so it's okay to cultivate those grapes and it's okay to drink it, so there's no kedusha. The only case would be you're gonna see, and this is something which I will point out again, just kind of like put a little bookmark there, like a little like thumbnail to kind of remember. You're gonna see even on supermarket shelves a third kind of wine. It's gonna say on it Otzar Beit Din. There's even Yardane, Yikvei Ramat Golan, the Golan wineries, Carmel Mizrahi, maybe smaller vineyards as well, will distribute wine which was made from grapes that were not sold to non-Jews and were cultivated according to all the halachos, which you take a hit, as I said, on the vine. You have less production, less quality, and they will distribute that as otzar based, which again means technically it's hefker, but it's distributed by a central rabbinic committee, the Beit Din, and the price that is paid really only goes to cover the cost in producing. Technically, theoretically, it should be cheaper than the regular one. Now, you're going to find two cases of this. Two cases, pun intended. Okay, case number one is the better case. You'll see on your community chat in WhatsApp that there's a distribution of otzar based in wine or a crate of fruit at Restart, at Bat Medrash. Come, 10 shekels per crate. 50 shekels for a carton of otzar based in grape juice. That's great. Where it gets a little stickier, and I'm not going to tell you that it's an usher. I will just tell you to proceed with caution. Sometimes on the supermarket shelf, you will see amongst the bottles. I got to tell you, you're looking, otzar based in. Is it this? Is it earlier years? You're going to see on the shelf a bottle of wine that says otzar based in. That's a little bit problematic because otzar based in really is distributed by the based in. If it's in the regular supermarket distribution channels, you're taking it to the cash register and it's being barcoded, scanned. There's something here is not the way otzar beit din was intended to be. This is a little too on the commercial side, and it requires attention. So I would personally not do that. If you could get it, someone brings you a bottle of wine, I said, thank you for having me. Here's a bottle of wine, and it's otzar based in, so you could drink. That would be your case, or the wine spilled on the table, the otzar based in wine. that would be the case where you could have oats. It will clearly be marked oats are based. It's not going to be in like bright, it may say high sugar content in bigger, bolder letters than the oats are based. And so you want to take a look. So now we're in the stage of questions. I see we're not going to make it to Shmitat Kesofim, but that's life. Okay, yes.
Mirvis? Rabbi
One second.
Mirvis?
I'll repeat the questions for those of you in Zoom. Go ahead.
No, actually, I had a question for a long time. I'm waiting.
If you don't mind, I didn't see your hand. I'm just going to listen to the question here, and then we'll go to Zoom. Go ahead.
Okay.
Someone brought me a container of grapes. On the container, it said, oats are basic. They bought it at the supermarket.
Really?
So is that the same kind of problem as the one you just described?
It would be the same issue. It would be the same issue. It would be the same issue. But to tell you shouldn't use it, no, I wouldn't tell you shouldn't use it. To actually buy it and pay it, technically, I'll just explain what the issue is. The issue is, this is like beyond, this one class, is that the way the holiness of Shemitah works is when you pay, if you buy Shemitah produce, so the money you give also becomes bound up with Shemitah kiddushat, and that enters the Super Soul financial network, and there's many issues with it, but it's really at the point of purchase. To receive it, I don't think there's an issue. You will pay attention, again, not for this class I see, but just because of the time constraints, there's issue of beer at a certain point down the line, when there ain't no more grapes in the field for the animals, then we're equal with everyone else. Beer, they have to be disposed of, they have to be abandoned, but you have time until that. It was okay if you ate them. Cal, you had said you had two more questions. Go ahead.
No fruit, no vegetables, just plants. I assume after Rosh Hashanah, there's Rosh Hashanah, you just weed it until
Weed it from, I've been waiting for this up till now. I hope you knew this. Those weeds, you really were not supposed to uproot them. You had to go at ground zero level and just like makaseach them, like mow them down. And you obviously, that's, so now you can just kick that up, uproot him right after Abdullah Motzi Shabbos. You can take revenge. Oh, go for it. You want to make shoots? You want to make new ones? Yeah, go. See, you're okay because you're not the nursery that you want to know. If it's coming from your own garden, you can do that. Okay.
Could you please repeat
Okay,
the
we're going to go
question?
to a question here on Zoom.
Could you please repeat the question?
I'll repeat her question. Yeah. Her question was, after Rosh Hashanah, is there an issue to weed as you please? And the answer is, you can weed, you can uproot as much as you want. There's absolutely no conceivable issues in my mind that with weeding. And if you have an aloe vera plant that was grown through Shemitah, it wasn't planted in a prohibited fashion, that you can go ahead and take, what are they called, branches or shoots, cuttings of it, and reproduce it immediately with no issues. Yes, Rabbi.
Wine from the also
It's a mitzvah, but just the channel should be.
My whole case is private. It's like organization.
It's private, right? That's the ideal.
Two problems here. First of all, you're not allowed to speak, not enough dollars.
Oh, right.
And not
Pesach, right?
Not allowed to wait
Right.
even a drop of it.
Right. So be careful. So be careful.
That's first of all. Then it's another problem. Comes Erev Pesach, you're supposed to take it out to the street, the whole case, and say it's hefker.
Right. That's what I call the beer.
Yeah, you throw them down, take it out of the house. But if you don't make the hefker, to be on my choice,
It's awesome.
it's not allowed to be from this wine forever.
Forever. Correct. So the eitzah is drink it before the deadline. Eat it before the deadline.
Not make the hefker and then.
You can take it back. Yes.
So let me get this right. The one that means it's kiddushat street.
Correct.
You can't spill by your dollar.
Correct.
So best thing is not to use that.
Oh, so this is an excellent point, And I think just because of time constraints, we'll have this and we'll have one more question after this, but I think this is a great question just to kind of sum up, because one of the things that kind of came out of today's meeting was the fact that, in a sense, there's a whole branch of Shemitah, which we are just about to encounter, and that's the holiness of the fruits, because really up till now, it's been the early apricots, there's peaches, I think, the summer, the early summer fruits, but we're going to be going deeper in the pomegranates on Rosh Hashanah and all of that. We're going to be getting into it, the dates. So I could just say, I need this headache from, let me buy from the 60, let me buy from Muhammad, let me buy from Turkey. Why should I have a chashash iser, right? And the answer is, the pasuk says in Bahar, it's a mitzvah to eat it. In other words, the dangers. There's a reason there's a danger, because there's a positive aspect to it, and it's just like. Someone made a comment. I don't know if you've been to America recently in the film world, but someone came back from once here, Brooklyn. The amount of I don't want to make fun of it, but I will. The amount of food culture is so really beyond. Someone said, how does he define the culture there? Parvim mizoinus. In other words, everything is kosher. It's all parv. It's all mizoinus. You don't need to wash. You don't need to bench. Eat what you want, how you want, when you want. It's like this whole food industry. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you have to be there to see it. It's actually somewhat grotesque, pardon me. And but that's I don't know about I'm not going to eat. I want to eat bread because birchas hamazon is such a doraisa. You don't make a mistake in birchas hamazon. It's a schus. It's a schus. So we can. Maybe that, the spies, we can't, we're not going to we can't keep the halachas. Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to come to Eretz Yisrael to be able to keep the halachas. Is it a challenge? Because is there chashash? Could you make a mistake? No pain, no gain. If, the advantage outweighs the disadvantages. And always, if you have a preference, I'll give you an example, which I did not mention. I'm going to close with this. In Prozbol, you can look it up on the internet. We have here Prozbols, which if you want to be able to collect your debts, if people owe you money, you should just sign that. That's a mitzvah. That's all I'm going to say. But I will just point out the last thing is you have it right here. Imam can help you do that. You can do it. Just pay attention if you're signing it now. Just pay attention if you're signing it now. That means preference, perhaps ideally, would be to wait even to Rosh Hashanah, not just in case you lend someone money between now and then, but the degree to which Prozbol, the Shmitat Kesofim, the release of the debts applies also to banks. And we don't treat a bank as a corporation, which is this non-entity, but we treat it as people. That if you get, hopefully I bless you, you should get money into your over b'shav, into your, I'm going to translate that, right? Something comes in, that's a loan. You just get a loan to them. Right? And technically that loan is able to be, you have to claim that loan whenever you want. That's how a bank works, right? So technically speaking, if you don't do that, if that's between today and next Sunday, if money comes in and you want to be able to make that withdrawal, basically to claim back your loan. So it's better to stick your Prozbol kama shiyoter as close as possible to Rosh Hashanah. I'm not saying it's absolutely necessary what to rely on if you don't, and who says you're going to get money, but besides that, you could wait. You could wait to sign it, but if you're scared, do it now, and there's what to rely on. Let me just come back to the last point. With this, I'm going to finish. You'll forgive me. Sukkis, etrog. There's an etrog that we're going to buy, right? The etrog, without getting into the details, whether it was cut and picked before Rosh Hashanah, and even if it was picked after Rosh Hashanah, but that etrog is a fruit, and it grew. It blossomed during Shemitah. So how are you buying an esrog? So one option is, I didn't buy an esrog. I'll say it as a joke. I just bought that little koshalach. I bought that little wrapper, for 200 shekels, and you get an esrog free, right? Okay, so that's not really what happens. But if you buy the set, then you're paying for the 3 other species, and buy 3 get 1 free. That's one way it works. But you don't always buy an esrog as a set. Sometimes you want to buy the esrog from this guy. So there's Otzer Beis Din. So with Otzer Beis Din, you want to make sure that it says Otzer Beis Din on the. If you're buying the esrog separately, that it says Otzer Beis Din on the esrog package, and there will be a set price. If the guy is saying, yeah, it's a set price, that's what I pay. No, you pay what the Beis Din says you pay, because it really reflects the costs in growing, sorting, and marketing the esrog. Don't fall for any shtick. I would buy my esrog from this year, especially from a more reliable source than usual. Even that's regarding the esrog. And the third thing is coming back to your question. Simple solution. I was in America a few weeks ago. I didn't get it. I didn't get why. You advertise esrogim mudarim from Morocco. I was in Atlanta, or from Italy. But so I was like, what is it? Eretz Yisrael esrog. Then I realized kiddushat shiviit, fruits which were grown for shiviit. They have kiddushat shiviit. They are usher to market and to export from Eretz Yisrael for one of 2 reasons we're getting to right now. So it's not even technically, it's not so simple. They're doing okay in America to get Moroccan esrogim. But I was talking to the guy who sells esrogim in my moshav, and I was like, what about this one? What that? He's like, all right, Rabbi, I'll just get Moroccan esrogim. Like, no, we have the holy Eretz Yisrael esrogim from Shmita is a major mitzvah, and there's many esrogim. It's so much more pedigree that they're true esrogim and not grafts than chutz la'aretz esrogim. And definitely a preference should be, you have to pay attention. Don't worry about it. You'll be fine. You can do it. It's not such a, it's not such a weight on us. And with this, I will again come back to the blessing that, as we say in Chasal, Seder Pesach, Kil Chasa, at the end of the Seder, we say, just like we talked about the Seder, next year should be Zocher the Kayim in Yerushalayim Rabbenuya. So to next time, we should all meet again in 7 years. But Shmita this time, Doraisa, with all the Am Yisrael living in Eretz Yisrael, with Yovel, and the whole 9 yards of Shmita.
One last quick question.
Okay. She was waiting. Or yes, last quick question.
Compost. I've been making compost all year long. So it's not from Shvius anything. It's not Hetemachir. It's just from the Chabad store. I buy all my vegetables and I'm making compost. So can I use that?
Yeah. Meaning you basically were using vegetables that were not, whatever was remained from non-Kedusha, right? Did not have Kedusha.
Correct.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Okay, be well.
Thank you, everyone. I'm signing off.
Is it going to be Zoom for next class?
There is a Zoom for the next class. You just hold on and you just continue with them.
Great, thank you.
So that Rosh Hashanah, as far as I'm thinking, you do that in a prohibited fashion. I don't want to do that. I don't want that. So that's what we're going to do the whole side. Whatever you cut now, that goes back to cut.
Sorry, a Prozbol. There are two.
Judy, two separate accounts.
There's another space. Or the husband. The husband. Okay.